Hello and welcome to another episode of the CHGO Fire Podcast, presented by Coors Light, the official domestic beer partner of Chicago Fire FC. Chicago, choose chill. Go to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer to get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And we have something to celebrate responsibly here at CHGO Fire. The Fire, for the first time in 2 months, have won a soccer game. Yes, it actually happened. Yes, worth celebrating. I'm sure there was no shortage of Coors Light and other beverages enjoyed after that win. Also, credit to everybody, all 25,000 plus of you who went to that game, because that weather sucked. I was at a different soccer game and was gladly indoors watching a bunch of other people get rained on. So, yeah, credit to the fans, credit to the Fire. Man, it feels better to be talking about a win than more and more losses. And I'm joined today by a returning guest from Glasshouse Soccer, Nick Poteres. Thanks for being here. Excited to talk about a win.
Yes. Oh, listen to that.
Got some fanfare
here. How many people are out there? That's great. No, great to be back, Alex. Thank you so much for the invitation. Always happy to be talking Chicago Fire, especially after a big victory. And yeah, the rain did not dampen the spirits of the fans. I was lucky enough, like my seats were right under one of the awnings on the United Club side of things. So I was like, you lean back, you're dry, you lean forward, you're screaming, you're celebrating. It was a great match.
Among the many things America could learn from Western Europe, one of them being why do we not build stadiums where the roofs cover the fans, because rain is a frequent thing, especially in this part of the country. For those of you who might be listening who are unfamiliar, yes, in Europe, basically all the stadiums, the roofs always cover the fans. Players still get wet, fans don't. When we're spending billions of dollars on stadiums, it's weird to think that that's not a thing we're covering. Anyway, a few stats about this win. Snaps a 9-game winless run for the Fire. It snaps a 14-match winless streak against the Galaxy. I was 16 years old the last time the Fire beat the LA Galaxy. That was a very, very, very long time ago. So, yeah, it's that's odd. This is also the first time since their last win, April 6th against Houston, that the Fire have scored more than one goal in a game. Also in that game, Brady and Gutierrez scoring the winner. Lots of comparisons. So yeah, it's I mean, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know it's been real bad. Been real bad, but we do have to acknowledge and celebrate things when they are good. We are going to go a bit out of order today. Generally, we do go through the games since last show in chronological order. But not only do we need to talk about the win, and that's the most interesting thing, those other two games weren't super eventful anyway. So, Chicago Fire 2, LA Galaxy 1. As I mentioned, big crowd, over 25,000. Probably a lot of people there because it's the Galaxy. This is usually one of the better selling games. Of course, they don't have Javier Hernandez, Chicharito anymore to kind of be that boost, but still a lot of people there. You know, you're thinking summer night. This is shortly after school has gotten out for a lot of people, so it's the right time of year.
Interesting. You mentioned Chicharito's not there for the Galaxy, and there's still a draw because it was Chicharito and Shaqiri who both were signed right around that same time. The big Chicago ties. Everybody thought he would come here. Both of those guys gone, and they still pull. I had heard they sold close to 30,000 tickets. Maybe a few people stayed away because of the weather, but that was quite the pull.
Yeah, you'd have to think. Also, probably a game where everybody there did not think the Fire were going to win. We should note an exception to that was Las Vegas. The Fire were not outright favored to win, but they were regarded as more likely to win than not, which, yes, Joseph Paintsil, who might be the best player in MLS, not named Leo Messi, remains out with an injury. Dejan Jovic, the LA Galaxy striker, was only healthy enough to make the bench, but this is still a team with Gabriel Peck out on the wing. It's still a team with a newly paid and also recently dyed blonde Ricky Puig playing in central midfield. So this is not the Galaxy, was not the Galaxy at full strength, but this is still a good Galaxy team, or at least it's a better Galaxy team than in recent years.
And what I liked about what the Fire did, you saw a little bit of that emulation of Ricky Push by Brady and Gutierrez. Those long midfield runs, those long strides, pushing the ball upfield. It's almost like they took a bit of a page out of the Galaxy's playbook. Now, if Gutierrez starts rolling his shorts like Ricky Push did in this game, then we're going to have a completely different conversation. But if he can keep attacking like him, then I'm all for it.
So a slightly different lineup also, as we're going to break down more of this pivot to the back three that we've seen for these last 3 games without Shaqiri. Those things have coincided. I don't know how coincidental that is. So we have a couple changes, though, for this game. Fabian Herbers comes in for Miguel Navarro. That sees Kellen Acosta move back a bit and be more of a defensive midfielder. And then we have Marin Haile Selassie replacing Tom Barlow as Kuiper's partner up front. Fair to say that Tom Barlow did not make much of an impression in the last 2 games. So, yeah, it was tough to tell if, with that lineup group, if the back three was going to continue. It did. So, obviously we'll get more into that later, like I said. Although this game, though, Nick, did not start well. It started like a lot of Fire games have started this season, which is with a defensive calamity. Rafael Chijos gets called for a handball in the box. Not called initially, is given by VAR. Some debate about this one. On the one hand, yes, his hand is way away from his body, but on the other hand, he's not looking, and it seems like a natural position. How would you describe the reaction in stadium and your reaction once everybody had seen the video of what had happened?
They're 2 completely different reactions. Like when you see it live at game speed, when you're in the stadium, especially I was sitting on the opposite side of where the play occurred, so it looked like maybe it would have hit him in the shoulder. It looked like it was incidental. Like you said, he's not looking. The ball just kind of ends up there, and the fans took that opportunity to begin the booing of the official, which was deserved for large stretches of this match. However, you look at the video, and I went back and watched it again in preparing for this show, and when you see the angle from the opposite side, pretty obvious. And even if you want to really get into the technical definition of what is and isn't a handball, it affected the play. There was a Galaxy player right there waiting for the ball, and as a result of it hitting Chijos in the arm, he could not make a play on it. The other thing I noticed in stadium is they stopped live play to have the VAR check done, or to have the referee go take a review on it.
And generally when that happens, if it's a situation where play's been going on for a bit and you get the VAR official into the ref's ear and says, like, hey, we don't want to let this go on much longer because this is pretty blatant. Yeah, that's generally a sign it's going to be changed. Ricky Push scores the penalty. Very much feels like, here we go again. But the Fire responded really well. Like, they were after the goal, we've seen them in these situations slump a lot this season. The Fire were the better team after this point, and then it takes a while, but Hugo Kuipers gets a goal, a very, very sloppy goal. Brady Gutierrez in midfield intercepts a pass, drives forward. This was a theme of the last couple of weeks. Him and Marin Haile Selassie both kind of just bundle it forward, not very intentionally. It takes a deflection, but then Kuipers pokes it home. It's his 5th of the season. The Fire had really not created anything, even though they had been the better team post-goal. Again, but this is the sort of thing. Yes, it's a scrappy goal, but this is what you're paying Hugo Kuipers to do. You're paying him to be in the right place at the right time.
Oh, 100%. And we can talk service all we want to, but the little toe pokes, the little dribblers, they count just as much as those 20-yard rockets. And you're right. If Hugo Kuipers is in the right spot, more often than not, he's going to find the ball, or eventually the team is going to start finding him.
Yeah, and as we've said, like, if you get him chances, if you get him volume, he's going to get goals. It's just the lack of volume has been a big problem.
Do you think that's good criticism of Kuipers, that he's getting maybe 2 or 3 shots a game and not converting at the rate we want to see, or at the goal-scoring clip? Or do you think it's more of that service that he's lacking at this point?
Well, while I'm talking, I'm going to pull up his FB ref page here, because my sense from the eye test is that he is scoring at about the rate you would expect him to score at. And again, that, if you're going to have a 20-goal striker, like, you're going to need more of that. I'm looking at
a goal every 3-4 games at this point, right? Would that bear out from what you're finding here? And again, is the criticism valid of him not scoring, or is it more so on everybody else around him?
Yeah, I mean, his non-penalty XG per 90 is less than half a goal. It's 0.4, which puts him in the 61st percentile in MLS. So he's just not getting, like, whether he's taking the looks or not, he is not getting that many looks, just period. So, it's hard to say. So far this season, his XG is 5 exactly. So he is right. He is literally exactly, this is according to FBref, he is exactly on pace. So again, it's just get him the ball more and you're going to get more opportunities. So their level, this play was also a great showcase of the freedom we've seen from Brady and Gutierrez. He's playing deeper than Fabian Herbers at times in this game. This is one such instance where that happened. So just something to keep an eye on. One of the things I've said, one of the things we've seen more broadly criticized about Brady and Gutierrez is that he hasn't always had a great defensive work rate, and that if he's going to take that next step up in his career, he's got to be more willing to do a bit of defending, because he's probably got to learn to be a bit more of an 8 than just a pure 10. And we've seen a lot of that. And again, this is a point in the game where out of possession, he is sitting next to Callan Acosta in kind of that line of 2, with Herbers more ahead almost as a winger in this moment. So just something to keep an eye on. It pays off here. Also a good time to note, because this game was not super eventful in terms of like big chances for either team. The Galaxy in particular, after the very early goal, did a whole bunch of nothing, which you could credit to the Fire's defensive shape. Galaxy didn't do anything in this game, really.
I mean, you heard Gutierrez say it in the post game or in one of his interviews. He's like, we know. Oh yeah, he was talking about him scoring, that intercepting that pass. They knew that the Galaxy just look to Push every time they're looking to get the ball to him, and so the Fire were able to kind of plan for that, defend around it. And like you said, Gutierrez sitting back. I don't think he shadowed Push, but sitting back a little bit and clogging those passing lanes.
I think that's probably more of Callan Acosta's job, and we were talking about this off air. This is something that's been discussed among MLS heads and U.S. men's national team heads for years, is that even though it is not his favorite position for teams Callan Acosta plays on, the best thing for those teams is for him to be playing as a 6, as a defensive midfielder. I would argue his national team career would have lasted a bit longer if he'd been willing to play in that position. When you think of at the national team level, the amount of injuries to Tyler Adams, and now you've got a guy like Johnny Cardoso, who plays for Real Betis, who has kind of come into his own, but that took some time to happen, and there was definitely a period in there where Acosta could have gotten more reps there, but he was kind of insistent both in LA and with the national team that he wants to be an 8, and as we'll talk about with the DC game, sometimes that pays off, but I thought he had a really, really good game kind of cutting those passing lanes.
Absolutely.
Another player, in addition to Gutierrez, who had a lot of freedom in this game was Marin Haile Selassie, who nominally is lined up as a striker next to Kuipers, but was kind of going everywhere. Mm-hmm. If this is going to be the Fire's shape going forward, and this is another thing we're going to kind of dive into deeper to later in the show, but this is an open spot, because Tom Barlow had his chances, did not seize it. Haile Selassie is going to play a bit differently. He's going to drift wide. He's going to come deep. He's going to be all over the place. And so, given how rigid the Fire have been, regardless of what shape they're playing, given how rigid we've seen this team play, it stood out in this game to see both Gutierrez and Haile Selassie have so much freedom.
Absolutely. And the way I've been watching the Fire is when they have the ball on defense, when they don't have the ball on defense, obviously, when they line up in their defensive formation, that's when you're seeing a kind of true shape, a true formation where the coaching staff wants them to line up, where they're drawing their line of confrontation. When it switches over to offense, when they get that turnover, they're fluid. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's an indictment on the coaching staff, not really instilling style of play and tactics and things of that nature. Or maybe at this point in the season, with this group of guys, with the way things are going in the locker room, on the pitch, guys, go, have fun, do what you do, you're professionals. And maybe it is kind of starting to pay off a little bit for them.
Yeah, because it's not the in vogue defensive shape, and we've seen the Fire, the in vogue thing in the world of soccer right now, especially among top teams in the world. This is what Manchester City do. It's what most really high level teams are doing at this point. It's what the U.S. women's national team is now doing. It is the 3-2-5 with the ball and the 4-4-2 without it. And we saw the Fire doing a whole lot of that 4-4-2ing for a lot of the year. I think maybe it would work with this group of players. I think the biggest problem there was you can't have Shaqiri be one of your line of confrontation up top, because he's not going to press. Right. Whereas like a Marin Haile Selassie or even a Tom Barlow, like they'll run without the ball. They'll give you that. But more what we saw in this game for the Fire is without the ball, it's a 5. It is definitively a 5 across the back. It's a 3 in midfield. It's a 2 up front. And again, this might shift against certain teams. If you want to give the balls to your fullbacks, cool, but we're not letting you pass through the middle. and we're not letting your wingers get on the ball. And that worked really well.
Yeah, and like you said, too, with our wingers, it allows them that freedom to play.
Yeah, and again, in this game, we saw both, Jonathan Dean and Arno Suke both getting really high at times, which, again, is a thing you could do when you have Mauricio Pineda dropping into that back three and kind of patrolling that with his athleticism.
Absolutely.
The game winner comes in the 61st minute. Really awful giveaway by the Galaxy out of the back, a sort of thing that Fire fans are very used to seeing the Fire do. Guti picks it up, drives forward, and just buries it bottom corner. Huge celebration, huge smile on his face. I can't remember the last time we saw him smile like that. It was probably the winner against Houston, but this is also the kind of luck the Fire don't get. This shot hits both posts before it goes in. Guti, again, he's a hot topic because he's a guy who clearly his favorite position is more as a 10. He gets shuttled out to the wing a lot because of Shaqiri. He probably, as I mentioned, needs to be more comfortable in the kind of role he was in these last couple games as more of an 8. And again, it's been a disappointing season so far. Time will tell, but it did feel like there was just an enormous relief in that moment for him.
Yeah, 100%. He said it post-game that he's still coming into his own and figuring out that new role for him, like you said, playing more of that 8 instead of the dedicated 10. But something that I have been wanting to see from him throughout this season, taking that growth step, is attacking the center. You want to call it zone 14. You want to throw all those kind of taboo or vogue phrases around, like you said. But attack the center. Make something happen. Far too long when he would pick the ball up, he would run it straight or run it out towards the corners, the wings, whatever, and because he was used to playing on the wing.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing him these last few games, when he gets the ball, whether it's from a pass or a turnover, he's driving towards the center of the attacking zone, forcing defenders to step up, kind of pull them out of position. And Gutierrez is good enough then where he can lay it off. And I think you even said that he laid one off to Selassie at some point during the last couple of matches that could have resulted in a play. If Kuipers is getting in those spots, it'll work the more he attacks the center of the pitch.
Yeah, I don't know how repeatable this is, but we've seen a lot of it recently. Like, again, these defensive giveaways where Guti then, to your point, charging up the pitch ends up creating something. So certainly something to keep an eye on as we go forward. As I said off the top, CHGO Fire is brought to you by Coors Light. Between work, social media, the news, the choices life throws our way, we can get worked up a lot. And Coors Light celebrates rising above and choosing a chill mindset. Yes, it is a lot easier to choose that chill mindset after your team wins rather than after the preceding 9 games where they didn't win. And I'm sure there was, some creativity of how do we make the best out of this celebration given that it's pouring rain. We want to get out of the rain. I'm sure a lot of Fire fans chose to chill, and Coors Light is there when you make that choice. Coors Light, we love it around here, especially throughout the summer at CHGO. There's been a lot of moments that I think we've all felt as sports fans. We just need to chill. Today's a happy day in that we can guarantee one of the Chicago baseball teams will win tonight because they're playing each other. And, of course, of late, there's been a lot of tough choices. So there's been a lot of days where we just got to choose to chill. Again, Coors Light, the perfect beer to reach for when you choose to chill. When those mountains turn blue on Coors Light's bottles and cans, Coors Light is as cold as the Rockies. It's cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. When you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment, crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light and get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer. That's CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right, Nick, there were other things that happened over the last couple weeks involving the Chicago Fire. We're going to get to the other games in a moment, but I actually, while we're on the topic of Brian Gutierrez, I want to talk about Brian Gutierrez and Chris Brady not being included on the recent Olympic national team training camp roster. This is not the final roster. They're playing a game against Guinea at Children's Mercy Park in Kansas City on Tuesday. The players started arriving, I believe, last night in Kansas City for this training camp. 25 players called in. The final roster for the Olympics is only 18 players, plus 4 training players. You can do the math there. Guti and Brady not called in. I want to start with Chris Brady because I think we would agree that he is certainly of the two, has been the more likely guy to get them there. He was the goalkeeper, what feels like forever ago now, when this team qualified for the Olympics. The goalkeepers who have been called into this camp, just two of them, despite the 25-man roster. It's just Gaga Slonina, old friend, and Patrick Schulte of the Columbus Crew. How surprised were you to see that, A, only two goalkeepers were called into this camp, and B, that Chris Brady was not one of them?
I think the second question relates to the first. The fact that they're only calling in two keepers was surprising to me, and I kept refreshing the link, going around the screen and looking at other rosters to make sure I wasn't missing it. But yeah, if you're going to call in two goalkeepers, then it's hard to argue against Schulte, and it's hard to argue against Slonina. I mean, if you want to look at Schulte maybe needing a rest and maybe needing to commit more to his club team now that CONCACAF Champions Cup is over, maybe there's an argument there. You want to argue against Slonina because of the terrible season his team had, but not really due to him.
Yeah, it was not his fault. He got a lot of reps in Belgium this season, but that's because Eupen were just god awful. They got extremely relegated, if I can put it that way. So,
and the only other thing I'd say about Brady is, well, is he going to be able to work with and communicate with that back line not being called in? But he's had the experience, like you said in the past.
He knows these guys.
It was surprising to me to see him not named, but also not to hear anyone within U.S. Soccer say, there were other players we considered, and we still got our eye out on some people, this and that. Like, we haven't heard anything like that either.
No, I think it's kind of clear that the message was sent earlier this year that Schulte had passed Brady in the depth chart. Schulte, I'm sure, is exhausted. I mean, again, just got absolutely walloped down in Pachuca over the weekend in the CONCACAF Champions League final. I'm sure he's coming into camp a bit tired. But again, so that signal's been made pretty clear. We should say there will be three goalkeepers in Paris because the way the roster works is the 18 players is two goalkeepers and 16 outfield players. You then get 4 additional training players who you can bring with, but once the roster is named, can only be brought in due to injury. So if a player gets hurt, you can then bring in one of those 4 for the rest of the tournament. They can't go back out. That's a permanent change once you make it. And of those 4 players you bring with, one of them has to be a goalkeeper. So there will be a third goalkeeper, but in a minute we can get into the merits of how interesting of a proposition is that.
Sure.
Meanwhile, Brady Gutierrez, not really surprised. He hasn't been in this group really at all over the last 6 months or so. To our knowledge, the Fire have never denied a call-up, so it has been simply a case of he's not been getting invited. So the question is, based on performances like the other night, if he keeps playing well over the next month, the final roster is due July 3rd, but I think we're probably expecting it not long after this camp. I'd say mid-June is probably when we're going to get this roster. Again, just July 3rd is FIFA's date, but that gets pretty close to the Olympics, and you want guys to be able to plan their travel and their club schedules and everything else.
Right. Yeah, and U.S. Soccer is very deferential to MLS when it comes to calling players and giving the clubs the time. So I'm with you. Right. I expect that early.
Especially with this being technically a youth tournament and clubs can say no. You also want to have the time that if you get a surprise denial from a club, now you've bought yourself some time to figure it out. Because the players he's competing against for a spot on this team are the likes of Cole Bassett, who's back in Colorado and playing very, very well for maybe the surprise package in the league this year in the Colorado Rapids. Paxton Aronson, who had a very good end of the season. Talk about Americans playing at horrible teams in Northern Europe. He was at Vitesse Arnhem, who were relegated due to a points deduction, but played well. He's now back in terms of being as a player, he's now back at Eintracht Frankfurt. Want to keep an eye on. And Esmir Baraktarovic, who's been like the only good thing you can say about the New England Revolution this season. And man, unless Guti just goes supernova for the next 3 matches, I don't see him jumping any of those guys.
Right.
And so I don't see a way. There's an outside chance I think he makes the training roster. There's no way he's getting into that 18, in my mind at least.
Yeah, and if the senior men's national team is any indication of how they want to run the rest of the soccer teams in U.S. soccer, they want that kind of camaraderie. They want that cohesiveness. So even if Gutierrez is not in the current lineup, goes on that supernova tear, they still may say, like, hey, we've got our core guys here. We don't need to bring someone else in at this point.
Yeah, the reward might be, hey, here's a ticket to Paris to mostly just hang out, if that's a thing you want to do. Yeah. Which, we did ask the public about this, because I think this is an interesting scenario, and the poll we put out was, if Brady and Gutierrez are both called up, but only as training players, should they go? And the options we gave were they could either go and probably don't play, they personally turned down the call up, or the Fire shouldn't release them if they're not in the actual 18. And Joey, I think we've got something on that to show what, at least what the people thought. And overwhelmingly, I would say among the three options, if you're watching on YouTube, you could see it's that they should go. Just under 60% of the votes said that they should accept the call up and go. 16% of the votes saying they should turn it down. And 25% saying the Fire shouldn't release them, which I think that last one's interesting because I don't see a scenario where the Fire make the decision for them, and that's why I think that second choice is so unlikely. It's because there's going to be a conversation had, and if the word gets through that they're going to be called up, but only as like part of that additional 4, you wonder if if Chris and Brian don't want to go, there's a real good way to save face there, which is for the Fire to take the fall. And which is for the Fire to say, we're not releasing them. And maybe it's a wink and a nod behind the scenes, but you save these young guys. It doesn't go down in writing, Chris Brady and Brian Gutierrez rejected to call up to the national team.
Yeah, you're right. There's got to be some sort of agreement or understanding that's going on outside of the press circle. But the other thing to keep in mind is one of the last international windows, the Fire did not release them. And I don't know if there's any sort of precedent that's been established or any sort of bad taste or feeling in U.S. soccer's mouth because of that may be affecting this. But at the end of the day, I would like to see them go. If they get the opportunity, even if it is a
once in a lifetime thing,
send them. Like, you're right, once in a lifetime, and on top of it, it's once in a career lifetime opportunity to go train with the best of the best in your country and play against some of the best in the world at your level.
And also just the Olympics as an athlete is a totally unique experience.
Absolutely.
I would say that generally, I think the relationship between U.S. soccer and the Fire is in a good place. If we go back to the kind of the Brady Gaga years of the agreement at any given time,
we'll take one of them.
Either the youth national team gets Brady, basically, or the seniors can have Gaga, but you can't take them both at the same time. So I think there's probably more of that here. Again, my expectation is that Chris Brady will definitely get this offer. Guti, we will have to wait and see.
Let me give you some context here. So Cole Bassett, 5 goals, 2 assists this year.
Okay.
Paxton Aronson, 4 goals with Vitesse on the season. Berek Terovich, only a goal and an assist.
But again, that New England team's been terrible.
Very true. He has definitely, the stats aren't bearing out his impact on the team. That's for sure. Gutierrez, 4 goals and an assist.
Oh, yeah,
so from the numbers standpoint, there's an argument to be had that he should be considered much more strongly.
Yeah, again, I think he's got a shot at the 22. I think Brady's the obvious third goalkeeper to call, but we'll have to again wait and see.
Let's not be hometown stupid here, right? And just be like, oh yeah, Chris Brady, of course.
Yeah, right. No, and because nothing's guaranteed. All right, moving on. We got a couple games we got to get through quickly here before some other things. The 2 draws, they were both 1-1s. DC United won, Chicago Fire 1. This was the debut of that 3-5-2 formation. The marquee matchup here was Carlos Terán, just basically man-marking Christian Benteke, who's been on a tear. And I think that's maybe the biggest thing from this game is if Carlos Terán can stay on the field from a health perspective and stay disciplined out there, he can be a really effective defender, and he can be a neutralizer against somebody like Benteke, who's just been absolutely dunking on everybody this season. And Terán did not get dunked on, which is a lot more than a lot of MLS defenders can say this season.
Yeah, if you're going to give up a set-piece goal to DC, how many times is it going to be Benteke doing it? And they did not give it up to Benteke this time.
They gave it up to 5'6" Fede Navarro somehow marking a center back, and that didn't go well at all.
Yeah.
So that's the one goal in this game.
What's the set-piece coach doing if you leave Fede Navarro marking a guy that's like 8 inches taller than him? That just blows my mind. I haven't been out to the training.
No,
I don't know.
And I don't wanna hit Ryan Needs too hard. I've made my feelings about this whole situation known.
Sorry, I don't want to make it awkward for you.
No, it's just, again, he seems like a nice guy. Everybody I know who's been around him and talked to him has said nothing but good things. But the Fire still suck at set pieces. It doesn't make any sense. Again, we don't know if it's a coaching problem or a player's not listening problem. Whatever. We don't need to psychoanalyze that anymore. Kellen Acosta early in the second half gets that goal I referenced. It's just a great team goal between Gutman, Kuipers, and Acosta. Again, you said that on the one hand, the tactics with the ball are a little bit fluid and do whatever you want. But as I said, I will take whatever this is over the 4-2-3-1, everybody stay in place and don't move that we've been seeing for most of the season. So whatever is going on here, I'm in favor of.
Yeah, I'm just kind of upset that it took this long to get to that point, going back to even last season.
Oh yeah, no, there's a whole different amount of questions to be asked. Whose idea is this change? Is this a Klopas idea? Is this an Nagamura idea? Is this a Garcia idea? Why did it take this long? Did they really just need to appease Shaqiri this whole time? And the minute you shoo him out the door, you can actually now play real soccer and do what you want to do.
Had that thought.
I think that might be a piece of it. I mean, why does Shaqiri have the captain's armband this year in the first place? To hopefully motivate him? Well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, you just let Acosta keep the armband the rest of the season as far as I am concerned. Andrew Gutman also looked good in this game. He had a couple chances he missed, but certainly a beneficiary of this setup and his ability to get forward and help in the attack.
Yes.
Of course, thus, because this is the way the Fire work, we can't have nice things. Chicago Fire 1, Orlando City 1. Andrew Gutman gets injured and is subbed out and is now out for some unknown amount of time.
Yeah, you kind of sum it up all there with same old Fire. This was the same old Fire. This was the good players are getting injured, or the players performing well are getting injured with Gutman, giving up the silly goals. You saw kind of the mental drop.
The silliest damn goal in the 4th minute of this game. I tried to count how many Fire players got a look at this. I think it's 8.
There's like 9 in the box.
Yeah, a bunch of guys look at a ball so if you didn't watch the game, imagine that there's a soccer ball just sitting 5 yards out from goal, and you have 8 players around it. And just none of them kick it. They all just stare at it. Finally, an Orlando player gets there after all these Fire players are standing around just watching. The Orlando player pokes it a little bit forward. Mauricio Pineda takes a big swing, goes right under it like he's using a 60-degree wedge on a golf course and mishitting it. Shios takes a stab at it. It pinballs around. It ends up in the back of the net. Again, I've seen some dumb goals conceded by this team. This is right up there. And in hindsight, it sucks even more because the remaining 86 minutes of this game, Orlando did absolutely nothing.
Oh, sure. And I kept looking at Facundo Torres to have another great game. We saw what he did against the Fire last season. We saw how he has kind of been the guy that they keep waiting to step up this season and repeat some of that success. Take them to the next level. Take them to supposedly a trophy that everyone was kind of looking for at the beginning of the season.
And they stink.
And this was going to be an easy game for him to do it, supposedly. And he couldn't. Just pokes this one in, though.
The Eastern Conference is still good, but Orlando stink. Atlanta really stink, and that's weird.
Yeah,
and
headlines there.
Yeah. I mean, Atlanta United, only 1 point above the Fire. That's with Giacomakis and Almada, both of who probably aren't going to be there in 2 months. So, woof.
Actually, it's already been out there, man. They have gotten rid of Almada. They have parted ways, with their coach. Sorry.
Oh, no, not Almada. No, Gonzalo Pineda's out. Gonzalo Pineda got fired yesterday.
And that contract's halfway done with Giacomakis to Chivas.
Yeah, to Cruz Azul.
Cruz Azul?
Yeah, so Giacomakis.
Excuse me.
By the time you're listening to this, that deal might be done. Thiago Almada is going to the Olympics with Argentina this summer, but this has kind of got to be the time they got to cash in, even if they don't get the money they want, especially if you're bad. Later in that first half, Kuipers misses a big chance. Again, here's the whole thing about like XG and, ending up at the mean. Because later in the game, he scores the equalizer. Pedro Gallese for Orlando, normally a very good goalkeeper, just completely whiffs this. Again, this is the thing with a striker. You miss the goal you should score. You score the one you shouldn't. That's how the game works. Again, generally the Fire were good after the first 5 minutes in this game. Yeah. But losing Andrew Gutman sucks. And it didn't change the tactics against the Galaxy the other night, but they don't have anybody who's a like-for-like replacement for him. Chase Gasper's been injured all year. There's not another out-and-out left-back on the roster. We've seen Dean on that side. We've seen Suke on that side. Yeah. Again, pros and cons to both of those guys.
Yeah, Dean's never been asked to push forward and be in attack. From what I have seen, it looks like they're just asking him to play competent defense and don't have the big screw-up.
Yeah, and the advantage Dean has is he's a lot quicker than Suke is, so if Suke gets stuck upfield, it's a bit more of a problem. Okay, let's talk about a couple non-game things. We've put this off long enough. Elvis has left the building. Xherdan Shaqiri, club captain, we remind you, was not with the team when they traveled to D.C. last week because he left a week early for Switzerland camp. A week! You would have maybe expected him to leave after the Orlando game. No, he missed 2 more games than he should have because sounds like everybody finally has had the come to Jesus moment and realized that this team is better without him. Quote from Frank Klopas. Quote, I think everything is up in the air, Klopas said on Wednesday. This is from an article by our friends at Men in Red 97. Shout out Tim, Alex, etc. Quote, as with every player going into the last year of their contract, I think the European summer window is the one that has more and bigger opportunities. But it has to make sense for the team. Makes sense would even be getting 3 pennies for Shaqiri. Yeah. This has to end, and we've got this poll. I really had some interesting results here. The question was very simple, Fire fans. Do you want to see him back next week after the international break? 88% of you said no, you don't, and I am with you. This has been a disaster from the beginning. Efforts this year to appease and motivate him have held back the team, have held back the soccer. Sure looks like everybody's happy without him because, again, 3 games, not a big sample size. Formation change. Still. No losses.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
And you know, every Klopas coach team is going to have that like random bump up, and maybe they're hitting that right now, and everyone's thinking, oh, well, maybe there is something going. I mean, yes, we're going to celebrate. We're going to enjoy the win. You got to kind of have a little pause there based on how they did play against the Galaxy, based on the history of the little mid-season Klopas bump. But I do love this quote, and that's just everything Klopas says. Like, I love
He's saying it without saying it here. Like, he is saying, again, the read between the lines here is basically, if you offer the Fire anything at all in the summer window for an early contract negotiation with Shaqiri, I assume that all they are asking for is to buy out the remaining roughly $4 million on a salary for the year. And if a team is willing to do that, call the free transfer and everyone moves on. Again, he's going to the Euros with Switzerland. We know he's going to give 150% in those games. He's probably not going to be fit right after the tournament. No. It's going to take him a while at the age he's at and the level of that tournament to come back. You know, so it's one of those things that he's got to be gone, right? Like, are you going to bring him back in here? I mean, he's not going to be at the Toronto game, but are you going to bring him in at Orlando a week from Saturday and put him up top with Kuipers, or move Goody again, or switch out of this formation? Like, it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, the only thing, if he is back by whatever front office decision, because I think you're right. I think the team is over him. I think the coaching staff is over him. And God bless Frank Klopas for like not doing the coach thing and be like, well, we'll see how that goes in the offseason. Like, he really gives us some good context.
But also,
here.
Klopas, I like Frank for a lot of reasons, but Frank is a Fire guy. He is a bit of a company guy. So he's not going out there and just saying that because it's what Frank Klopas thinks. Like, he is, when Frank Klopas talks, he is speaking for the organization. Okay. So that was a very public, I'm sure behind the scenes, it's pretty well known what the state of things is. That was a very public, yes, we would like to get rid of this guy. Please, somebody come and get him. Like,
if he does come back after this break, and again, there is some decision where he needs to play or we have to do something with him, whatever, I think it's very easy to say, well, you just got off a long plane ride there, Shaq. Why don't you start on the bench for a couple, 3 matches?
But I want to know,
we'll see how it goes.
What was the initial conversation like? Who initiated the conversation? Who's the one who said Shaqiri is only scheduled to miss 2 games? We would like him to miss 4. Is that Shaq saying I want to go early, or is that the team saying go take an early vacation? Yeah. We might never know the answer to that question, but I'm genuinely
maybe it's the
curious.
Swiss team. Like, please send him over quicker. We need to work with them.
I mean, everybody knows what's going on. I mean, Switzerland has always been his priority. This was true 10 years ago when he was still kind of at the peak of his powers as a player. Like, he takes it up a level at international tournaments for Switzerland. That's just so. This is going to be his last one of those also. So I think everybody here is very eyes wide open that he wants to give 100% to Switzerland. He wants to do everything he can to have a good last international tournament. And that's great. Like, I'm not going to criticize a guy for that. But I think everybody's cards are on the table at this point. And the next question is, I think you just got to ask Shaqiri, well, where does he want to go? Does he want to go to Switzerland? In which case, if you can't sell him, you can use that second buyout that might be coming and just send him to Lugano. You know, does he want to go home to Basel, and can you negotiate a contract buyout with them? Does he want to go somewhere else? Like, again, I think everybody's very on this. I think finally out in public. Everybody's on the same page here. Let's just get it done and move on and open up that DP spot.
And let's see that Lugano strike force of
Casper
Shaqiri to Shabilko. Yes, let's do it.
Also, shout out Nacho ALLCITY. Yes, he is still there. I want to talk a little bit more about this back three we've seen from the Fire. It wasn't a midfield diamond, as I and a lot of other people's thought when we saw that DC lineup. It's Chihos, Tehran, Pineda, left or right across the back three, with Pineda occasionally pushing up a little bit in possession. Guti's playing as an 8. We've talked about that. And so that was the last thing on the polls yesterday that we asked the public is, what do they think of this? And the choices we gave them were, is this something you've been wanting to see? Is this something you were skeptical about when you first saw it and you're like, oh, this is actually working? Or are you still not sold? And Joey, I think we've got one more for the people on that front. A handful of people, 13% saying they've been calling for the back three and are happy to see it. But even 50%, and this is where I land, were skeptical about doing this, but pleasantly surprised. And then 37% say they are still not sold on it. Nick, where would you say you land in that spectrum?
I am like in between those last two answers there because you can't argue with results. 5 points in 3 matches. But on the other side of things, like we've seen how terrible it has been against teams of a higher quality than DC and Orlando and in rotated injured Galaxy squad. So I still kind of remain skeptical on it. And it didn't work under Ezra, hasn't worked under Frank in the past. And I think it's going to get exploited again at some point.
Yeah, we don't know when we're going to see that, though, because the Fire's upcoming schedule is not exactly the toughest. 2 away games before our next show, no midweek games. Saturday at Toronto, who will be without Federico Bernardeschi and his interesting, we'll call them, braids. That was certainly
that's a choice.
That was certainly a choice. So, yeah, Saturday at Toronto, no Bernardeschi. That's a winnable game. Following Saturday, as I mentioned, at Orlando. Hey, maybe if they don't give up a comical goal in the first few minutes, they can win that game too. Although, we'll preface it by saying, overwhelmingly, Orlando is everybody's least favorite place to play because it's just so damn humid. Yeah. And so, yeah, no one likes playing there. So, yeah, those are the next 2 games. Again, I think Toronto's a 3. If they can get 4 points out of those games, I mean, I think that would be a pretty good haul. Again, it's 1 win. Let's not get over our skis too much. But the last 2 weeks have certainly, if not given signs for optimism, soccer decisions have been made that make sense. And I think that is a good start. Nick, before we get out of here, I did want to touch on, because we don't have a Red Stars show today, back in 2 weeks with another one of those. This Saturday is that Red Stars game at Wrigley Field. All of the sections are open. They are pretty publicly now pushing for a sellout. So if you do not have plans on Saturday afternoon, Red Stars against Bay FC, at Wrigley Field on Saturday afternoon. They're pushing for their sellout. I think definitely there's going to be at least 30,000 fans there. The Cubs are getting in on the act. I saw yesterday that B. Franklin and Leilani Nesbitt, 2 rookies actually for the Red Stars, were on the Marquee pregame show talking about the game. They had a bunch of players on a boat yesterday driving around the Riverwalk and the Playpen downtown. Okay. I guess not yesterday. That would have been on Sunday, with just big soccer balls on it and big Red Stars signs. If you're going to the Sox-Cubs game tomorrow on Wednesday before the game, I believe I saw that it's Carrie Riccaro and Ali Schlegel are going to be guest bartenders at Murphy's Bleachers across the street from Wrigley Field. Also, of course, this week, keep an eye out for all of our CHGO White Sox and CHGO Cubs guys doing coverage from Wrigley as the Sox take on the Cubs tonight and tomorrow. Again, somebody's got to win because, boy, Chicago baseball right now has been in a better place. So, again, really exciting things going on around Chicago sports, particularly, though, that Red Stars game on Saturday. Also, shout out Mal Swanson, 2 goals against South Korea the other day. Tierna Davidson, former Red Star, 2 goals against South Korea. They play again tonight. Maybe. It looks like the weather's going to be real nasty up in St. Paul, but you can potentially watch Mal Swanson do more fun things tonight. I believe that game kicks off at 7. That is going to do it for this episode of CHGO Fire. Wonderful. Nick Poteres, Glasshouse Soccer, thanks again for coming back. Really enjoyed having you.
Always a pleasure, Alex. Thank you.
And thank you to Joey behind the scenes today, graphics, sound effects, and the works. And thank you to all of you for watching on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alex Campbell, and I'll see you next time.